So when did you start working in the executive search industry, and could you please tell us about your background in that industry?
Yeah, I have been in the higher ed search industry now for 4.5 years. I spent 25 years in higher education, and in January of 2016, I went to work for another firm. I left higher ed and went to work for another firm that I had a previous relationship with, and I knew the folks there. And after about 14 months, decided that I wanted to try to do my own thing and make some changes in the way that search, that at least I had experienced search, number one, as a candidate, because I had previously been candidate, and I served on search committees, and then I was in the search side as a consultant and a recruiter. So there were a number of things that really I felt needed to be adjusted. And so in June of 2017, I officially launched Higher Education Leadership Search, and we have just finished our third year, starting our fourth year now, and we just were recognized in the top 40 of the higher education recruiting firms for the first time after our third year. So that was really a nice honor.
Very exciting. Very exciting. It looks like your changes have been working for you.
They have. It was, it's, I mean, as you know, things are, anytime you try to change a model, you know, people question whether it actually would work and how it works and will it work. And, you know, higher education is not necessarily a bastion of innovation, believe it or not. But once we got out and started showing that our model, number one, could work, and started getting the feedback from the candidates that we dealt with and the search committees we dealt with, then we started realizing, yes, this is going to work. And we also have recognized that this process, our process, may not necessarily work for everyone. So we have turned down jobs because people wanted us to do it their way, and we said, well, no, this is how we do it, and we find it very effective. And if you want to do it that way, then you're going to have to find somebody who will accommodate you.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about that process?
Yeah, there were several things that were really just kind of, I always found a little difficult, that a lot of the searches, when I was on a search committee in higher ed, some of these searches would last 4, 5, 6 months. So the model we developed was just to streamline the search process, number one, for the people who were serving on the search committee. Once the process started, they worked very diligently for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and they're done. And then it also is streamlined with the intent to make sure that we don't lose good candidates. Because if you let these searches drag out, then you can potentially lose a candidate, because kind of the philosophy is, if you're in one search, typically you're in another search. If you've gotten to that point, that framework in your mind where you're looking for another job, or where we've contacted you about that, then that has kind of launched your mindset to say, hey, I'm open for a change. And so if someone offers you that opportunity before we do, then chances are you're going to take it. So it was intended to do that. Then the key piece was the finances. We've drastically reduced our fee because we drastically reduced our time. So the institutions like the fact that they don't have to pay so much. The people involved in the search from the institutions like that because they get in and they do their work, and the candidates like it because we stay in communication with them. Things move quite quickly. So that's really the difference, I would say, for us. And so, yes, it has been very successful. We've conducted now over 40 searches in our 3 years of existence. So we feel very good about the process.
In the last few months, lives have changed. COVID-19 has had quite an impact on businesses, including the recruitment sector, and particularly in higher education as schools have shut down and things like that. How's COVID-19 impacted your business?
It brought it to a grinding halt. Um, we finished our last search early March. We had 5 searches ready to start, and each of those institutions basically called and said, "Hey, we're going to have to put them on hold for right now." I've had a couple of contacts in the last week or so saying, "Hey, it looks like we're going to try to do these searches, but we haven't had anything definitive yet." So one of the things that we're doing to help institutions that are wanting to start these searches, we're actually trying to help them say, okay, if you can't do those things, here's some things you really need to be thinking about to start to, number one, to help recruit candidates, number two, to help those people who need to be involved institutionally, and then number three, how do you get people to want to move and even visit? Because these people are talking about, you're not just talking about a job, you're talking about someone's family, you're talking about uprooting them, you're talking about kids changing schools, you're talking about a spouse leaving a job. So in this type of uncertainty, you throw all that on top of it, is really institutions are going to have to become much more sensitive around that, and I think a little bit more creative on how they deal with those realities. I'm certainly quite fearful that getting young people and getting professors and getting people back on campuses this fall is going to be much more challenging, I'm afraid, than people are thinking it's going to be. And if that happens, then you're going to have budgets that are drastically impacted. And so are they going to have the funds and the resources to even conduct searches, even if they wanted to? So I hate to be very skeptical, but I'm certainly quite cautious about how this is going to move forward, because I do think higher education is going to be one of those market sectors that is going to give us a pretty good indicator on how things are doing within the overall economy. Because if kids can't go back to school and can't go to school, that's going to be I'm afraid that may turn out to be a very long slog for us, unfortunately.
What's your
Okay.
outlook on the search industry for 2020 in the next few years?
I think once a vaccine is developed, the comfort level is going to change. People will go back to their day to day, and once a vaccine is developed and available to the general population, it will. So I think that higher ed is going to be one of those particular areas that if higher ed is doing well, then that may be a good sign. If it struggles to get out of the gate this fall, or institutions start closing because of cases, things like that, I think that's going to be a very negative sign. So, but in the other part of that is, from the recruiting standpoint, it's going to get difficult to get people to move and to consider new jobs. But I think there are people, they're going to have to do searches. There's certain positions that they are going to do searches for, and there are going to be, but I do think it's just going to be a tough, slow process for us over the next 2 to 3 years, unfortunately. That's just my perception.
So slight change of topic. We've only got a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us how FileFinder supports your day-to-day business?
Oh yeah. I'll kind of go back a little bit to when I got ready to start the company. Um, when I got ready to start the company, obviously I knew I was going to need some type of database support. So I started looking out there because I really did not like the one that I was using at the time. In fact, it was not even really designed for that purpose. It was just kind of retrofitted. So, so when I started looking, I did come across FileFinder. Um, I was really impressed from the very beginning. My academic background is out of the fundraising side, advancement or development, whichever term you choose to use. And for those people who are familiar with that, or even recruiting in admissions is true to this fact. You know, if you don't have good data, you're not going to be very successful when you're recruiting kids or you're keeping students, and especially on the fundraising side. So I had always used a very sophisticated database system. So I know how important they are. And so when I was looking at FileFinder, it reminded me so much of the logical nature and logical flow of the development software that I was so familiar with. Um, but it just impacts everything we do from the beginning of the search to the end of the search. Getting candidates in, making the information available to the search committee members, giving them access to the candidates. I think that's one of the things that they really like. Is the search committees, they have access to the candidate information just like we do. We provide them all the details. If they choose to download them, they can download it. If they choose to just use it, in FileFinder, they can do that from the client side. So I mean, it really governs everything we do from the start to the finish, and our consultants use it for managing the entire process. We couldn't do our job without it, or it would be very difficult. I can understand how people can do these things without the type of software that the FileFinder is. And for us, the other piece that's really impressive for us is when there are issues, how responsive your team is to our needs as well. So the software support and the support side is even important, because that helps, because there are issues. I mean, it's software. There are updates, there are glitches, there are changes, there are hiccups. That's the reality of what software does. But when those things happen, or when we mess up, which that happens more, but when we do, having the technical support to do that and to deal with that really makes things much easier as well for us.
So you've pretty much been using the client portal since you started with us. How has that helped you manage the search process with your clients?
Well, again, that's the thing that they like, because they have access to the data. So it's been one of those pieces that's just really very advantageous for us, because when they look at it, sometimes they'll sit there and go, "Oh, this is the first time I've ever been on a search committee where I have total access to all the data." And so it's just very interesting. And I think one of the things that we see is it creates a greater sense of transparency, and it creates a greater sense of accountability within a search committee. So it's really that's been a key feature that we talk about. In fact, we do our training with that's actually the first thing that we do with the search committee members when we engage them, is we walk them through how to use the portal. And once they do that, they like that side of it. And I will say one last thing. It's interesting. We do a lot of repeat searches for institutions, and probably you know, probably about 10 individuals um, who initially did searches with us. When they come back and they actually want to serve on the search committee again when they find out we're the one doing the search, because they know our process. And then they become an advocate for us, and then they also then can become a support. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, but it's a key feature for us, especially in higher ed, who those people want to be involved, and they are involved, like we were talking about earlier.